Standing in my own dining room, watching my son swirl a glass of my expensive wine while dismantling my life, I felt a strange sense of detachment. He had invited himself and his wife over for Sunday dinner, ate the food I spent hours preparing, and was now explaining why I had no right to live in my own home. I was 66 years old, widowed for 5 years, and apparently living too comfortably for their liking. My late husband and I built this 4-bedroom house with our own hands, filling every corner with decades of laughter, holiday memories, and quiet moments. Yet here was my son, wearing a costly designer sweater I had purchased for him, suggesting I downsize to a tiny condo. He claimed I was wasting my retirement on gardening and small trips, when that money could easily fund his children's activities and his wife failing online store. I glanced out the window at his brand new luxury vehicle sitting in my driveway, knowing full well he could barely afford the monthly payments. They sat across from me like corporate auditors, sizing up my life as if my savings belonged to them. I could have brought up the countless loans I had quietly forgiven or the bills I secretly paid to keep them afloat. Instead, I simply smiled and told them I would look closely at my finances. They left that night convinced they had won, leaving a mountain of dirty dishes scattered across my kitchen counters. Rather than cleaning up, I walked straight into my home office and logged into my bank accounts. I pulled up every recurring statement from the past year, grabbed a blank notebook, and began listing every single charge connected to my son's household. What I discovered left me completely numb. I was paying for their premium car insurance policy, their family cell phones, high-speed internet, digital streaming accounts, cloud storage, and even the software subscription for his wife's business. Added to that were private sports coaches, meal kit deliveries, highway toll passes, and forgotten magazine memberships. There were 24 separate automatic payments draining my retirement fund every single month. I was not helping them, I was funding an extravagant lifestyle they could not afford. The guilt I carried as a mother vanished in an instant, replaced by absolute clarity. My son told me to cut unnecessary expenses, so I decided to follow his advice down to the last penny. One by one, I removed my debit card from their digital accounts, canceled every recurring payment, and severed my checking account from his wallet. Within 45 minutes, the silent financial bleed was completely stopped. The next morning was the most peaceful Monday I had experienced in years. I sat on my patio with a mug of fresh coffee, listening to the birds and watching the sunrise over my garden. At exactly 7:42, my phone started buzzing with my son caller ID. He sounded rushed, explaining that my card was declined at a coffee shop and asking for the number so he could read it to his phone. When I calmly told him I could not do that, his confusion quickly turned into irritation. I reminded him of his advice from the night before, explaining that I was simply eliminating unnecessary expenses from my monthly budget. He scoffed, claiming it was just a few dollars for coffee, completely unaware that his entire financial safety net had been dismantled hours ago. He hung up annoyed, unaware that the real storm was coming. By 2 in the afternoon, my daughter-in-law called me in an absolute panic. Her business software was locked, their car insurance had been canceled, and their internet provider was threatening immediate disconnection. She demanded to know if I had done something, and I plainly told her that I had removed my payment information from every single account. She accused me of ruining their lives, but I reminded her that this was her idea of financial responsibility. Less than an hour later, my son's SUV slammed into my driveway, and he let himself in using his emergency house key. He marched into the living room, furious about his car insurance and accusing me of acting crazy. When he demanded my credit card to fix everything, I calmly refused and asked for my house key back. He refused, stomped out, and slammed the door so hard the frames trembled. The moment they left, I hired a local locksmith who replaced every single exterior lock within an hour. I reset the garage security code and walked down to the basement, which had slowly turned into my daughter-in-law unofficial storage unit. I carried every single one of her forgotten inventory boxes upstairs, stacked them neatly by the driveway under a heavy tarp, and finally reclaimed my own space. Later that evening, my daughter-in-law arrived to pick up her things, furious that her key no longer worked. She screamed through the door camera, telling me I was a terrible grandmother and threatening that I would never see my grandsons again. But minutes after she drove away, my 16-year-old grandson texted me, saying he loved me and asking if he could still come over for Sunday morning pancakes. The following afternoon, I agreed to meet my son at a quiet local diner to talk. Both he and his wife looked exhausted, defeated, and deeply stressed by 24 hours of real-world financial responsibility. They begged for just 6 more months of help, promising they would leave my house alone if I just paid their bills a little longer. Instead of arguing, I slid a printed document across the table showing every payment I had made for them over the last 5 years. The total came to over $43,000. My son stared at the number in complete shock, realizing for the very first time how much he had relied on my generosity. He lowered his head in genuine shame, finally understanding the weight of his entitlement. I told him that I loved him, but I was done protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. He gave a quiet apology, realizing that my enabling days were officially over. I left a tip on the table, walked out into the warm afternoon sun, and drove back to a quiet home that finally belonged entirely to me. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the subscribe button right now. And if you want to watch another amazing story just like this one, click on the video appearing on your end screen right now.